Path of Exile 2's 0.4 update is approaching the end of its 4th week, and by this point, the meta has taken shape and quite a lot has changed since the State of the Meta video that I dropped just before Christmas. Now, I wanted to take this opportunity to dive into the topic of defences in Path of Exile 2, and take a look at the different defensive setups that are being utilised across popular archetypes in the last of the Druids. Let's begin on the left side of the tree, because patch 0.4 brought quite a lot of changes to this area, providing a lot of new options, and with that we also have the new shapeshifting skills along with the Druid class. Now, one of the prominent defensive tools on this side of the tree is block, and historically we've seen quite a lot of shield usage in builds in this area of the tree, especially warrior melee builds that opt for Giant's Blood and use a two-handed mace alongside a shield, or caster or minion setups utilising a scepter shield combo. Now, it's worth mentioning that not all of those builds were heavily investing into passive block chance on the tree, with some of them making use of the active block component, especially useful for minion builds where the character can benefit from that active defense while the minions deal their damage. But in patch 0.3, approximately 6.2% of level 90 plus characters in softcore trade 4 weeks in were making use of a shield in their offhand slot, and this has only dropped to 5.5% in 0.4. And this is notable due to the fact that talismans, the brand new weapon type, cannot be used alongside a shield. Now, part of the reason that shields have maintained their popularity is the huge uptick in shield wall builds. In fact, Shield Wall has been the most popular starter for warrior builds in 0.4, with 43% of Ascended warriors using this skill in week 1, and when we compare the hardcore SSF league for 0.3 and 0.4, shield usage has actually increased league on league. And once again, this is the direct result of a massive boost in Shield Wall builds. Of course, the shift is much more noticeable in hardcore solo self-found, where Shield Wall builds for characters level 90 plus 4 weeks in has risen from just 4% in 0.3 to 17% in 0.4. That's a huge swing, and Titan is actually the second most played ascendancy just behind the newly added Disciple of Varashta. And if this new Sorc specialization wasn't added in this patch, Titan would likely have completely dominated the hardcore meta. However, the Disciple of Varashta is very much a real ascendancy, and it's also one that's made quite a splash in 0.4. This ascendancy is dominating HC SSF, and is also the second most played in hardcore trade, whilst in softcore it's doing quite well too. And this is not a big surprise considering how good this class is defensively. The 4th teaching is a notable on the Disciple of Varashta that makes you have 40% more energy shield recharge rate while at 35% of maximum energy shield or lower. So essentially, the larger you're able to make your energy shield hit pool, the more effectiveness you can get out of this node, where you're still able to have a decent amount of effective hit pool at the stage where that much higher recovery begins to kick in. This notable is being used by literally every single Disciple of Varashta character level 90 plus in hardcore, and even in softcore is being picked up by a massive 98% of characters. Now, this node, alongside powerful utilities such as the Nascent Hope Charm or the Convalescence skill, both of which are also very popular, allows the natural recovery of energy shield, that's the recharge function, to become much more reliable. And in the event that you take a considerable amount of damage, enough to bring you low enough, you'll be able to force recharge, benefiting from the boosted recovery and ensuring you can recover to full again. The Disciple of Varashta also has another node branching from this one, which is another defensive powerhouse, Sacred Rituals, which makes 60% of current energy shield be added to armor to determine your physical damage reduction for incoming hits. And these two notables combined with Chaos Inoculation has formed the basis for one of the strongest defensive setups in 0.4, and that's why this new ascendancy is so prominent in hardcore leagues. But the Disciple of Varashta is also one of the driving factors behind the massive spike in Chaos Inoculation builds across all leagues in patch 0.4. In softcore trade, Fate of the Vaal, usage of CI has nearly doubled for level 90 plus characters 4 weeks in, compared to the previous leak, from 12% of characters in 0.3 to a massive 22% in 0.4. And the same trend can be seen in the hardcore solo self-found league, from 16% in 0.3 to 31% of characters in 0.4. Now, we do need to address the elephant in the room here, and that is that whilst the Disciple of Varashta is very strong, this isn't the only reason for the boom in CI builds. There's also the fact that Energy Shield is still in such a strong place compared to pure life setups, despite a huge balance pass, which nobody saw coming in 0.4, but as large of a balance patch as it was, and whilst it did shift lots of things around and enabled some new builds, what it didn't do was the one thing many were expecting, the long-awaited nerf to Energy Shield stacking. Instead, Energy Shield remained largely unscathed in 0.4, and the addition of the Disciple of Varashta is more of the case of an ideal vessel for these types of builds. This ascendancy just has the perfect tools to take advantage of, especially in a hardcore setting, and that's why we're seeing so many gravitate towards this class defense combo for 0.4. Now let's move back to the left side of the tree for a moment and discuss talismans, because as I touched on earlier, you cannot use a shield in combination with this weapon type, and in a lot of ways the shield is what was enabling the pure life setups that warriors were using in mace melee builds. So how are the typical Druid setups surviving in 0.4? Well, many are leaning into hybrid life ES defenses. There are a decent amount of Energy Shield and Armor hybrid wheels in the newly updated section of the tree, and you can see that a very large majority of these builds are investing into scaling Energy Shield as an extension of life. Additionally, just under a third of Talisman builds are making use of the new keystone, Lord of the Wilds, to allow them to also use a non-unique scepter alongside their talisman, granting access to a purity resistance aura, and this not only relieves some gear pressure in terms of resistance suffix modifiers, but it also allows the use of a bunch of free reservation support gems, for example Vitality or Clarity. This is possibly a bug, but it's been in the game for a while and it's well known by now, and bug or not, this is also providing a decent boost to those builds. Okay, let's shift gears again because we need to discuss the Pathfinder for a moment. After all, this was one of the biggest changes in patch 0.4, and the newly reworked Pathfinder has become incredibly popular. Now, one of the things that this class has that sets it apart from the rest is just how diverse it is, with a lot of the power on the Ascendancy being made up of very generic stats that can apply to a huge variety of builds. This means that you can play this class and make it work on pretty much any build, and you can access farther on the tree than any other class thanks to the new Pathseeker notable. But one of the most useful parts of the Pathfinder Ascendancy is the mobility-focused branch that prevents you from being slowed, halves the movement penalty of skill usage, and, new in 0.4, prevents you from being heavily stunned while sprinting. This is some of the very best quality of life you can obtain in Path of Exile 2, but it's also incredibly powerful defensively. Map modifiers such as Chilled Ground or Temporal Chains are very dangerous, and being able to run these mods freely is a huge boon to this Ascendancy. And on that topic, this patch we have the rise of self-chill builds. Now, arguably, one of the strongest defenses in Path of Exile 2 is speed. Being able to move and attack or cast so fast that nothing is able to hit you or catch up with you. And that's exactly what the self-chill builds have going for them. Extreme levels of speed that actually just ends up looking a little bit broken with the character models. However, I must also mention Asphyxia's Wrath in this section, because when combined with Sierran Inheritance, which reverses the effect of chill on you, this quiver actually makes you take reduced damage based on chill effects, providing absurd amounts of damage reduction, so you'll not only be so fast that nothing can hit you, but if something somehow does manage to deal damage to you, you'll reduce it by a massive amount too. That is insanely strong. Now lastly, in this video, I do want to briefly touch on the Witch Hunter's Sorcery Ward change in patch 0.4, to make this ability absorb damage from all types if you invest into the full 4-point branch. This change has improved the popularity of this ascendancy in hardcore trade specifically, from 1% of level 90 plus characters in 0.3 to 4% in 0.4, but across the other leagues, including even hardcore solo self-found, there's not much of a change. Notably though, in HCSSF, the 4th fastest character to level 100 was a Witch Hunter using the new Sorcery Ward. That was Cesterix, and I expect this one to be a bit more of a sleeper pick for a while until people start to realise just how powerful this is, especially when paired with Avoidance layers. It's really quite good. But that's going to be it for this one, a bit of an overview on some of the emergent defensive trends for patch 0.4. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.